was born with the gift of the gab. With MagMongoSlade. Shoot. He don't miss.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. I am your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to cover an article from Voices of Wrestling entitled, "Is AEW Actually for the Sickos?" in which I find out that the hardest of the hardcore wrestling fans are starting to question Tony Khan and AEW's bona fides in terms of whether they are actually trying to engage the hardest of the hardcore, the sickos in wrestling. And after skimming through this thing, I might be a sicko myself. The great and magnificent MagMongoSlade, might actually be a sicko. Let's get into this thing. June 29th, 2024, the writer is named Roma Faliani. And I have to say, this is one of the more poorly written articles to ever grace Voices of Wrestling. At the very least, the usually grandiose purple prose of some of the European guys usually is kind of humorous to listen to them be all elitist. But this guy, it's not like he had an idea, but he didn't quite flesh it out. But there is still enough there to have a real conversation. So he says, quote, AEW wants its identity again. I guess it said identity back. He says, that's not a deep analysis of what the last months of AEW programming have been, but something any functional human being could see from a mile away. And he talks about the wrestling being more wrestling based, going back to the in-ring part. And that's what they wanted. They wanted them to go back into the wrestling. He says, quote, the mere idea of restoring the feeling expresses a necessity of going back to the values that made AEW what it is today. Therefore, it would make sense that they're looking to appeal to more of the fans that have stuck with them through Max Caster segments and anything involving Don Callis. That snark is always going to be there. Boy, Dave Meltzer has done tremendous damage to the wrestling criticism space because the snark is almost always there. But I do agree that Max Caster is not that good. So now we're going to get into the definition of the sickos and whether the sickos are actually the audience here. So the beginning, of course, is about AEW wants an identity. And their identity is that they're a hardcore wrestling show for the sickos. So now we got to answer the question, what is a sicko and what do sickos like? So it starts out, this part of the article starts out very hot. He says, quote, it's no secret some wrestling fans are mad that AEW has stolen the term sicko and has used it to market their product to a more hardcore audience. And it's also no secret that they're failing to catch the attention of the so-called sickos they swear to represent. The thing is that marketing your company towards sickos immediately shall be somewhat of a red alert, because the mere idea of the sicko term being used by AEW fans has been moderately controversial in the deep circles where that word began being thrown around. To be honest, sicko is just a meme that in no way, shape, or form shall be used by a brand, because we all know what happens when brands start using memes. For short, they die. So, the issue here is that Tony Khan is trying to make sickos a thing, and he doesn't want sickos co-opted. It's our thing, This is a thing that was for them, I said our, but I'm speaking from his perspective. It's our thing. Being a sicko is what we are. You can't take that and then monetize it, And he says, quote, the term sicko is not an exception to the rule due to it feeling empty once you know a millionaire is using it to make people buy merchandise. More so if the original meaning of sicko in the wrestling community was pandered to a more hardcore audience, or an audience that just yearns for the sport to be more appealing of their taste. It should be appealing to their taste. So what is a sicko? I'm trying to get to the definition. He says the sicko is an entity that does not conform to what you could do or what you have to do, but expects what you didn't know you could do. So the sickos, by definition, as according to this Voices of Wrestling writer, it says expects what you didn't know you could do. So expecting the unexpected, things that are kind of outside of the box. I'm trying to make it more palatable and more understanding than he tried to make it. He says, for example, he'll give his example. The last show that has pandered to the real sickos was Josh Barnett's Bloodsport Bushido, because you had names there that connected with the original idea of what a sicko was. El Desperado's Invitacional was also an example of that, because marketing your shows to sickos implies giving sickos what they want. And no, sickos don't want Osprey matches. They want to see something out of the ordinary. So, I love Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. You know, I watched every one of them that has happened so far. I liked Bloodsport Bushido. So this is the kind of, I was like, wait a minute. Am I a sicko? And then, of course, he mentioned El Desperado's Invitacional, which I kind of just like, what? My brain short circuit. I'm like, why would I watch that? But I understand where he's coming from. Again, things that are out of the ordinary, things that kind of push the envelope. You know, this is what the sickos are down for. But it seems like that's exactly what these guys have promoted themselves as being. Like, no, who has promoted Will Ospreay more than the hardest of the hardcore wrestling fans? I know it's been 10 years of that, and maybe Ospreay isn't the kind of guy that tickles their fancy anymore, which even though I know that he does, but he's more mainstream now than he's ever been before. The last couple of years in New Japan, with him being a top guy, with Dave Meltzer giving every match he's in 5 stars, he's not quite the niche that he used to be. Back in the day when he was doing tumbling routines with Ricochet, everybody thought that he was basically on the cutting edge of wrestling. But now here it is 10, 12 years later, you know, everybody's kind of like, yeah, we've seen all that. You know, now we're all about something else or someone else or doing other things. So, you know, it's an ever-changing dynamic, this sickos, right? You know, he says, this is going to be very confusing. I'm trying to slow this down. It's risky to imply it, I guess, imply sickos like that, because you will sound like the most annoying human being in the world. But I guess people can be mad about a wrestling company using a term that they use to identify not only their tastes in wrestling, but people who they could share that taste with. Well, these guys are absolutely annoying. And it just goes to show that these guys are just not in any way satisfied. Tony Khan, according to, I don't know where it came from, but it says he spends $105 million, $110 million or whatever on talent. And on indie, a lot of these people are indie talent. You know, some are more mainstream WWE style talent, like, you know, Mercedes and Edge and Chris Jericho and Christian, etc. But a lot of Tony Khan's money went towards independent talent, most of whom are not proven on the main stage. He's dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into production and pay-per-views and renting out buildings. And this guy is still being told by the hardest of the hardcore fans who are supposed to be his audience, his people. He's a message board guy, just like these dudes. That, we're not really into that kind of stuff anymore. After you invested all that time, all that money, all those resources into trying to get us to watch your show, I mean, the fickleness of the sickos is absolutely entertaining. They got Tony Khan to make the mistake of dumping all of his resources into this thing, and then they just kindly look away and back away from it and finding something else to get into, because the thing that they liked is becoming more and more mainstream. So now they're starting to criticize and starting to attack it and come after it, which is typical. Whenever you see people like back in the day, they used to like a band, a garage band or underground rapper or whatever, and then they become mainstream. They say, oh, you became mainstream now. Not everybody likes you. People have said that about me, because I used to say I was a fan of Kendrick Lamar back in like 2009 or whatever. And now in 2024, I'm kind of criticizing them. They're like, oh, well, you're one of those guys that you don't ever want to see the artists blow up. You never want to see these guys become more popular. And that's not true. It's just that sometimes you understand that to go mainstream, certain things had to change. And those compromises are kind of the thing that you didn't like. Sometimes the things that you really like are the things that are being compromised. And it's unfortunate that it happens this way. But this is why, Vince didn't always listen to these people. He chose to invest his time and money in characters and programs that was going to make him money back, not to satisfy the sickos. But let's get back to this thing. This analysis of what AEW has done to the term sicko does not only stick to wrestling, but any other aspect of life in which a brand has used something to appeal to a certain type of audience they want to be a part of it. Interesting. He says, it's somewhat familiar to the capitalist mindset, in which everything has to be something you can make money with, or something that can be used as an accessory, more so than something that is used to feel identified. This is an interesting piece here, because it's almost like they view this stuff like art. Meanwhile, the moment you get in the business, you have to look at it like a business. This is the difference between consumer and producer. When you are a producer, you're looking to get a return on that investment. Tony Khan, even if he's losing money, and we don't know for sure that he is, but he is looking to make money on every production he puts on. He can't book for people, only the hardest of the hardcores, and continuously lose money and stay in business. Nobody can do that. So they're, by definition, they're asking for something that can really never be. Nobody has infinite resources in which to dump into things that you guys want that might not appeal to anybody else. And then when they go out of business, you sit back and, oh, it was great. I mean, I know these guys do this all the time. They sit back and talk about how great Dragon Gate was, or, some other mid 2000s indie promotion that's gone out of business. And they share the clips, and, oh, they have hard drive full of stuff that they passed around on Daily Motion or whatever, but the company's long dead. And to be quite honest, pandering to the sickos, man, probably not a good idea, because they're not business minded. They don't care about your continued success. They only care about feelings. And this guy's talking about feeling identified. He wants to feel identified with the product. And this is why I think AEW was so successful previously. And this is something also that he's going to say. It's going to require for me to skip forward a little bit, but I'm going to do that right now. He says, quote, I yearn for the company to, quote, restore the feeling, because I didn't watch any of AEW's programming for 6 months, thanks to its losing its identity in 2023. I've been watching AEW since its inception, and I have witnessed the peak of the original vision, this being Full Gear 2021. Now, for all of you out there who might not understand, I'm pretty sure all of you are smart, but Full Gear 2021, that's 2 years into the promotion. This promotion is 5 years old. This guy is telling you that AEW peaked 2 years into its run. This is what he's telling you. It peaked 2 years into his run, and then 2 years later, he wasn't even watching it anymore. It's almost as if he's incredibly fickle. 2 years in, oh, it's peaked. It's not going to get any better than this. This is the pinnacle of what AEW is. So just for shits and giggles, I looked, and let's go through this card, Full Gear 2021. Let's go through the card, because he said this is the pinnacle of AEW. So we're going to do a little bit of a detour so we can get the idea of what he thinks the pinnacle of AEW is. So here's one of the matches. Hikaru Shida and Thunder Rosa versus Jamie Hayter and Nyla Rose. Huh? Oof. MJF versus Darby Allin. Okay, I'll give you that one. That one's probably would be a big match today. You know, with these guys having a little bit more time into their careers, that would be a big match today. AEW World Tag Team Championship, the Lucha Brothers versus FTR. Okay, I can give you that too. You know, it's a shame that most of these guys are no further along today than they were back then, but okay. Miro versus Bryan Danielson. Okay, I can give you that one too. Not bad. You know, it's okay. Falls Count Anywhere, Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express versus Adam Cole and the Young Bucks. Oof. Is that an appropriate usage of Adam Cole, though? Because he hadn't been in the company this long, and he was already doing 6-man tags on pay-per-view. That sucks. Cody Rhodes and Pac versus Andrade El Idolo and Malachi Black. Huh? Okay. Look, I'm looking at this stuff out of context. So looking at the matches out of context without, you know, understanding or remembering the stories that was involved, because I'm pretty sure Malachi Black was fairly new in the company. Maybe Andrade was too at around this time. AEW Women's title, Britt Baker versus Ty Conti. Ty Conti? Britt Baker? Okay, she hasn't been around for a while. I wonder where she at. CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston. Now this is interesting because I actually remember the story about this one. So, okay, let's go into the next one. What's the next one? A Minneapolis street fight, the Inner Circle versus the Men of the Year and American Top Team. Now, most of you may not know who Men of the Year is, but it's Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky versus American Top Team, which includes Junior Dos Santos and Andre Arlovsky, two UFC fighters, two former UFC fighters. Get out of here. This is the pinnacle of AEW, by the way. And it says the AEW World Championship, Hangman Adam Page versus Kenny Omega. This is when Adam Page won the title, apparently. So there's a lot of people who are, you know, big fans of AEW. For them, this was the pinnacle of their storytelling. Is, you know, the mid-card guy, Hangman Page, the guy who's over with the boys, you know, and therefore over with the audience. The nepotism, that guy becoming world champion was the highest peak when it comes to AEW, because it's a guy who was on the independents that they liked that now is being, you know, rocketed up to the championship. And then, of course, because he won the title, everything kind of started to deteriorate around him. But you're not supposed to blame them for that. You know, that's where you basically, you know, take the blame for it. But that's what he's saying. Full Gear 2021 is the pinnacle of AEW. Very weird. He said that's why AEW is not for the sickos. Because if AEW were for the sickos, you wouldn't have MJF against Hechicero at Forbidden Door. You would have Daniel Garcia versus Hechicero. You wouldn't have Hook, Samoa Joe, and Katsuyori Shibata in a faction. You would have Hook versus Katsuyori Shibata in an Americanized version of Shibata versus Fujita Jr. Hayato back in 2005 Michinoku Pro. See, this is what I mean, right? Like, what on earth is he talking about? This might as well be in a different language. Nobody in terms of the mainstream audience knows who any of these people are. Okay, it's not enough that he brought in Hechicero, and only people who have, you know, the inclination to watch CMLL even know who that guy is. You know, it's not enough. He has to have a specific opponent. It's like the fact that you booked him, period, should have been a nod to the sickos, because most people have no idea who this guy is. You know, like, Nobody knows who he is, and you putting him on pay-per-view, a $50 event. And you booked this guy to wrestle one of your top guys, one of your franchise players, and all these dudes are just shrugging like, I don't get it. I'm really not understanding this. But whatever. Again, another mid-2000s company in Michinoku Pro, though, right? Here's the kicker. Here's the kick in the balls right here. AEW has failed to find its core audience because at the end of the day, it's still a millionaire company, and millionaire companies always try to make everything about money and how much you can sell a premise with a term you've stolen from the deepest circles of wrestling discourse which you once frequented. It's a $1 billion company. According to Dave Meltzer, it's worth $2 billion. Tony Khan is worth billions of dollars. So it's worse than being a millionaire. But now you're saying that this guy stole your terminology. He is engaging in cultural appropriation of the term sicko for the purposes of making money, even though he's talking directly to you, and you know he used to be one of the message boards, cage match guys that you guys love. You know that. And you're saying we reject it because you're trying to make money. That's not what we're about. We're not about trying to make money. We don't care if these companies go out of business or not. And it's like, you got to stop telling people you need to book these shows. You want Warner Brothers, Discovery, and all these people to invest in wrestling, and yet you want to find the most high school gym wrestling in the middle of a mall kind of shit and say, you need to book that. That's the kind of stuff you need to book. Nobody's going to pump hundreds of millions of dollars into that crap. Be for real. Be for real. You just don't want to see wrestling on television. You just want to be able to cruise through somebody's gigafiles and find some obscure wrestling show, one of the most obscure wrestling shows ever, and enjoy that. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's what you should be able to do. But trying to tell this guy that this is how he should book his product, that's insane. That's insane. He says, said circles that are now stating you have killed sickos for good. And to be honest, you did the second you started selling merch with a word on it. Because it's not a word anymore. The universal weapon people have is words. You use words to express your ideas and your thoughts, to live the life you want to live, to digress with something, and to write an article about how words are becoming accessories in modern society. Words have meanings, and you can't change them for anything that it's worth. Words shall never be something worth $20, because you would be a sick man if you want them to have a price. So yeah, AEW is not for the sickos, and it's okay to say that. I am floored by this. Absolutely floored. All this man did was make a t-shirt. That's all he did. He put For the Sickos on a t-shirt, and this guy wrote a diatribe about it and basically completely rejected the conception that AEW is for the hardest of the hardcores, despite the fact that Tony Khan continues to scrape the bottom of Japan and Mexico, looking for wrestlers to bring on his television to give them huge paydays and opportunities. And these guys, the moment these people go mainstream, they're not interested anymore. You know, the moment you go mainstream, we talk about trying to make some money, you're not interested anymore. And the crazy thing is, and I feel bad for Tony Khan now, because while this is one person who is being very vocal, the concept of restoring the feeling and all this kind of stuff has been a conversation lately, you know, for the last several months. So this article is prescient in that way. The issue we have here is you have CM Punk, who is saying that this company is not about making money. It's about the personal whims of Tony Khan and the elite, you know, getting to do whatever they want. So CM Punk is saying this is not really a business. You know, it's a circle jerk between, you know, the boss and his friends. And now you're saying from the sickos, from the audience, that all you care about is money. He can't win. He's stuck in the middle. He cannot win. He's got one of his biggest stars he's ever signed saying that he's not running a professional wrestling company. And the other guys are angry that you are running a professional wrestling company. How can you win with allies like this? I mean, Tony Khan's better off maybe just trying his best and maybe making some creative changes here and there, but you cannot be for the sickos because they only want things that are underground, not mainstream, not palatable for, you know, television. And that's not what you're trying to do. There's only so much money you can lose. You bought Ring of Honor for the sickos so Vince McMahon wouldn't get it. And they don't watch it. And they don't talk about it. And they don't care about it anymore. You know? And they stopped caring pretty much after like the second show that he put on. Nobody even talks about Ring of Honor anymore. He put all that money into saving that company. And now nobody really cares. And nobody talks about it. And it's like, how much money is we expecting Tony Khan to put into this? Hoping to prove to these people that he's just like them, only to be turned around and said, well, no, you're a multi-billionaire. You're nothing like us. You're just trying to culturally appropriate the term sicko. That's very unfortunate. But let me know what you guys think. Is MagMongoSlade a sicko? Is Tony Khan in AEW for the sickos? Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you guys later.